Hello, I am Peter Okwoche. Welcome to Focus on Africa, our top stories. Africa is just a few thousand cases shy of 1 million coronavirus infections. Our correspondents will take you around the continent to paint a picture of the situation on the ground. As Beirut picks up the pieces 2 days after a blast decimated its port area, we'll be hearing the harrowing account of an Ethiopian domestic worker caught up in the chaos. Also on the program, can South Africa's dry spell last much longer? We speak to bar owners and brewery bosses on the impact the country's alcohol ban is having on the industry.
The president decided to close off the economy like he was closing a tap in his house. And we are where we are now, facing economic ruin that knows no end.
And if you're suffering Olympics withdrawal, we'll have a dose of African glory for you with a story of the Kenyan Julius Yego. He's the only African man to ever win an Olympic medal in the javelin. Thanks for joining us here on Focus on Africa from BBC World News. The true scale of the coronavirus pandemic in Africa may be hidden because of a lack of testing and issues with data. That's according to the International Committee for the Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies. The continent is just a few thousand infections shy of 1 million confirmed cases. At the start of the pandemic, the virus was relatively slow to spread. But cases have doubled in the last 3.5 weeks. Our correspondents across the region have been monitoring the virus's spread over the last few months. Let's get a snapshot of the situation as it now stands.
Just over 3 million people have been tested for coronavirus in South Africa, which recorded its first case 5 months ago. About 8,000 people have died, and just over 500,000 people have tested positive for the virus. Africa's most industrialized nation announced a nationwide lockdown at the end of March to prevent the spread of COVID-19, but it has now eased restrictions to boost economic activity. But infections peaked as restrictions were eased. The country's health minister, Dr. Zweli Mkhize, says the country is doing all it can to flatten the curve. And in Mozambique, about half the people who tested positive for coronavirus have now recovered fully, with less than 20 fatalities reported. The country's president, Filipe Nyusi, has imposed another 30-day state of emergency to prevent the spread of coronavirus. In a televised speech to the nation, the president said easing restrictions would be done in phases starting from the 18th of August. Neighboring Lesotho has recorded just over 700 cases of coronavirus. But there are concerns that infections are on the rise in the Mountain Kingdom and also in Zimbabwe. Botswana has now followed South Africa's example of banning alcohol and suspending liquor licenses. The government there says people are not complying with COVID-19 regulations because of alcohol. Let's now go to Egypt, the first African country to record a case back in February. Sally Nabil has the latest from the capital, Cairo.
Egypt, one of Africa's worst hit countries, has witnessed a sharp drop in the number of infections and deaths in recent days, according to official figures. But the government has been constantly criticized for not doing enough tests. The authorities have called on the people here to wear face masks in public places and commit to social distancing. But very few seem to abide by these rules. Life in Cairo is business as usual. The city is as busy and bustling as always. The borders have been open now and tourists are back. Egypt depends on tourism as a major source of income, and so do other North African countries like Tunisia and Morocco. But unlike Egypt, these two countries have witnessed a sharp spike in numbers as restrictions have been largely eased. 26 airport staff members in the Tunisian capital have been infected. Tunisians are now obliged to wear face masks in public places. On the other hand, the Moroccan authorities have suspended annual leaves for medical staff across the country. Some nurses and doctors are said to be unhappy with that. In neighboring Libya, numbers are rising too. This doesn't come as a surprise. The country has been suffering from internal fighting and divisions for years, and medical facilities are unprepared. These North African countries are quite worried about a potential second wave of the virus. The World Health Organization says one of the African countries fueling the surge is Kenya. Here is Rhoda Odeyambo from Nairobi.
East Africa is the fourth most affected region on the continent after Southern, Northern and Western Africa. More than 84,000 COVID-19 cases have been reported here. In East Africa, Kenya, Ethiopia and Sudan have the highest number of COVID-19 cases. This has been attributed to increased testing and reopening of the economy by various heads of state. Kenya, Ethiopia, Rwanda and Uganda have conducted more than 200,000 COVID-19 tests. Unlike South Africa, where healthcare workers are going into the community looking for symptomatic cases, governments here are conducting targeted testing, focusing on a particular population or an area that has a cluster of cases. Governments are also conducting pool testing, while samples are combined and tested for COVID-19, which reduces the time and supplies required. Even with this, the Africa CDC is concerned about the cases being reported in Kenya, Ethiopia and Sudan, where cases are rising fast. It is also urging the Tanzanian government to share its statistics on COVID-19, as neither the Africa CDC nor the WHO has received any data from the country in the last 3 months. Let's now cross over to Nigeria, where my colleague Chris Ewokor will share what governments in West Africa are doing to contain a further spread of COVID-19.
In West Africa, some countries are seeing what looks like leveling of the curve, but some are also witnessing rising cases of COVID-19. Nigeria recorded 459 new cases of COVID-19, according to updates by the Nigeria Center for Disease Control. Nigeria now has 44,890 cases, with over 32,000 of them already discharged and 927 deaths so far. In the last few days, the number of cases in Nigeria has been reducing, but the Minister of Health is saying that it is not yet time to rejoice because it's too early to be thinking that the curve is flattening. In Côte d'Ivoire, 5 new cases were recorded according to the country's new update. There are a total of 16,349 cases, but 12,000 of them have recovered. There are also 103 deaths. Senegal has recorded 177 new cases and 5 new deaths. So far, the country has a total of 10,715 cases. 7,000 of them have recovered, and there are 223 deaths. In the Gambia, President Adama Barrow has declared a state of emergency and introduced nationwide night curfew for 21 days as coronavirus cases keep rising. The president said that the borders and airspace will remain closed except for cargo, diplomats, and those seeking treatments abroad. The vice president and 3 other ministers have been infected. Now back to you in the studio, Peter.
Thank you very much, Chris Ewokor there from Abuja. We also heard from Rhoda Odeyambo in Nairobi, Sally Nabil in Cairo, and Nomsa Maseko in Johannesburg. Now, anger is mounting in Beirut at the failures of Lebanon's political elite to do anything to prevent Tuesday's massive explosion in the city's port. The blast killed at least 137 people, injured more than 5,000, and left 250,000 people homeless. President Macron of France has arrived in Beirut. He's been mobbed by crowds pleading with him to help them and to ensure those responsible face justice. Macron warned that if reforms were not made, Lebanon would continue to suffer. France is one of many countries giving aid to Lebanon, including search teams, doctors and equipment. Some of the city's hospitals have been damaged by or are partly operational, and drug supplies are running low. The scene at the port is one of utter devastation. Bulldozers have been brought in to clear the wreckage. There are around 2,000 registered and recognized African refugees in the country, mostly in the capital, Beirut. But the number of undocumented African migrant workers is thought to run into the thousands. Hard to account for, Their fate may never be known. Well, joining me now, it's Tigreda Berhanu from Ethiopia. She's an activist. She's been in Lebanon for 7 years. She's also with a group called Enga Lenga Besidet, which works to protect the rights of domestic workers in the country. She joins me from Beirut. Could you just start off by describing your experience 2 days ago to us, please?
Okay, thanks for having me. So what happened was we were here where we distribute egg relief because of the coronavirus that domestic workers and others, people who needs our support, we were doing that. And I was sitting at the same place where I am now. And I was talking to the people who's around me that who needs assistance and some kind of materials. It just happened, and the experience was really scary, and I thought we're gonna die, but thank God nothing happened to us. At the beginning I thought it was earthquake, and because of the house was shaking, and the chair that I sit on it was shaking, and all the table in front of me, everything was shaking. So it was very difficult even to describe, but thank God we are safe.
Yeah, Tigreda, we're very glad that you're safe as well. What's the situation today?
So today, everybody's volunteers and other people who can able to go on the street. Everyone's volunteering, cleaning, distributing foods from different organizations like Caritas, Red Cross, and all the people who's living here in Beirut, and the people around, outside of Beirut. They are cleaning the streets and fixing the house, all the windows and everything damaged.
And Tigreda, what are you hearing about other Africans who are also in Beirut?
That's good. So many are they get hurt and they get injured. They are in the hospital. Some of them they get treatment, medical treatment, and at home they are asking for more help like medicine and stuff. Many pharmacies damaged and they are not giving service, so they are calling us for medical treatment, medicine, food, and clothes. You know, everything's damaged and they need a quick assistance and medicine. So that's what we are.
The line is not great, but I just want to ask you, are African migrants in Beirut, in Lebanon as a whole, are you getting any help at all from the authorities there?
I mean, we are organization. We are providing even from before. Still, we are doing, and the people who's outside of Beirut and inside Beirut, they are helping migrant domestic workers, also Africans, and we are also supporting our community from different nationality. We have Sierra Leone's, Ghana, Nigerian. They need food and shelter, so we are calling for different organizations, and also we are providing food, rent, and that's what we are doing so far.
Okay, Tigreda Berhanu, thank you very much, and we do wish you all the very best. She's an Ethiopian who's lived in Beirut for 7 years, and we do apologize for the quality of that line. We thought it was an important story and kept at it. Now, South Africa has included a ban on alcohol as part of its lockdown measures. The idea is to free up hospital space. South Africa has some of the heaviest drinkers in the world, and its unhealthy relationship with alcohol often leads to alcohol-related trauma incidents. But with over 100,000 job losses in the industry and lost tax revenue, can the taps be kept dry for much longer? Vumana Nkize reports.
Mogela's Place in Tembisa, north of Johannesburg, is one of over 34,000 registered taverns nationwide. These informal bars are a common feature of township life. Kagiso Mogela runs this business with his elderly father, and it's their only source of income.
Okay, this is where we keep our alcohol. This is our counter.
Prevented from selling, Kagiso fears his stock, with over $9,000, will expire. And if the ban isn't lifted soon, he says he'll be plunged into debt in order to restock his tavern.
I feel like we've been taking the breath out of our mouth because we live from these taverns, you understand? our income is only tavern.
Taverns are a key driver of economic activity in communities where opportunities are limited. Tavern owners are disappointed with the lack of consultation from government.
The president decided to close off the economy like he was closing a tap in his house. So, and we are where we are now, facing economic ruin that knows no end. We don't even know when this thing is going to end. That's another problem that we have with the attitude of the government.
Even big businesses are starting to feel the pinch. The two biggest brewers in the country, South African Breweries and Heineken, have giant facilities that are standing idle. Collectively, they've pulled back on planned investments totaling $640 million as a direct consequence of the ban. The liquor industry supports over 1 million jobs, contributing around 3% to GDP. Now, ordinarily, the machinery below me would be teeming with workers. It would be packaging beer into various bottles, and it would be very noisy. But as the ban on alcohol sales continues, taps have run dry, and the industry is at a standstill. Over 100,000 jobs in the industry have already been lost since the end of March. Heineken's shelved plans for a new brewery in the port city of Durban is a further dent to the struggling sector.
Unfortunately, we had to make a decision to put it on hold because it is an ambition that at this point in time we are unable to pursue, given the tough economic challenges and, of course, the impact that the ban has placed on our industry.
Government's reasoning for the ban was to create capacity in hospital trauma units, often flooded by alcohol-related incidents. Medical experts say the ban has worked in alleviating pressure on hospitals, and even they are calling for the ban to be lifted.
A ban on alcohol sales is not sustainable in the long term. We need to address the deep problems that are driving the heavy drinking problem. And so we'd rather see the government move again to a basket of tougher interventions on alcohol regulatory controls rather than maintaining the ban.
There's still no indication as to when the ban will be lifted. For tavern owners like Kagiso, the longer the ban continues, the deeper their financial problems become. Vumani Mkize, BBC News, Johannesburg.
Let's take a quick look now at other stories making the headlines across Africa and the rest of the world. Guinea's ruling party has nominated Alpha Condé to run for a third term in this year's October elections. Under Guinea's constitution, presidents may only serve 2 terms. The 82-year-old leader pushed through a revamped constitution that opponents say was crafted to effectively reset the term counter, enabling him to run again. Talk of his running again has sparked widespread protests that have killed at least 30 people. And over in Zimbabwe, a new law to punish political parties for campaigning against the country is on the cards after cabinet approved the plan. It comes days after President Emmerson Mnangagwa labeled some opposition members as terrorists. Meanwhile, some critics are calling for the international community to sanction the government over human rights abuses. This is Focus on Africa from BBC World News with me, Peter Okwoche. Still to come on the program, we take you back to the 1996 Rio Olympics, where Kenya's Julius Yego became the only African to ever win an Olympic medal in the javelin. I'm Peter Okwoche. Welcome back. Now, the Olympics should be happening in Tokyo, Japan right now, but they've been postponed for a year due to the coronavirus. So we're reflecting on previous African successes, and today we recall how Kenya's Julius Yego became the only African man to ever win an Olympic medal in the javelin, a feat that he could not properly celebrate at the time.
Hailing from a country whose athletes dominate middle and long distance running events, Julius Yego's path to Olympic glory was never going to be easy.
I don't want anybody to face that, to go through what I went. I fought for myself. I remember the first time when I went to win the gold in the All African Games, when now I was removed from the team just because people thought that field event is nothing.
That was in 2011. Within 4 years, the Kenyan was African champion, Commonwealth champion and world champion. Not bad for a man who learned javelin off the internet, in particular studying Norway's Andreas Thorkildsen, who Yego met when reaching the Olympic final at his first games in 2012.
I remember speaking to, the Olympic record holder, Andreas Thorkildsen, of course, who is my idol. And then he told me that, Diego, if you really focus on training, you will go far, and don't ever lose hope.
He did not lose hope. By the time the 2016 Games in Brazil arrived, world champion Diego was a serious contender. In the final, he started superbly, throwing nearly 90 meters. But then, injury struck on his fourth throw.
I was feeling a lot of pain, and I remember my coach didn't want me to get out of the stadium, but the medics, they forced me to go for medical, treatment. And I knew at that point, if anything happens, of course, I might not win because I was not able to progress, with the remaining throws, but I will get a medal.
Unable to throw again, all Diego could do was anxiously wait.
I remember in the medical room, I couldn't even, listen to the doctor. I wanted just to see the results. When I was still there, one of the medics came in and he told me, you know what, congratulations, you just won a silver. I just woke up from that bed and then I came out. I never got a treatment there. I got a treatment the following day. Even though the pain was too much, I was not able, of course, to celebrate. I walk around the stadium with that pain. And everybody else in that stadium was so happy for me, of course, getting injured, getting a medal, being, of course, coming from a country where, traditionally it's about long distance and middle distance. And those people were happy for me. Even my competitors were so happy for me that, I got that medal.
What a man. He's known as YouTube Diego. Now, many people have been wondering how the coronavirus pandemic will ultimately affect the fashion industry, but Anifa Mvuemba might have come up with an answer. At the end of July, the Congolese designer behind the Hanifa label staged a fashion show with a difference on Instagram Live. Take a look.
You're trying to break into an industry that's predominantly, white, and it's tough. That alone has just made me want to stay in my own lane.
Anifa Mvuemba is a fashion designer from the United States. She recently broke the internet with her virtual fashion show.
I didn't go to school for this, so I learned everything that I know from Google searching. I started teaching myself how to really do this 3D stuff. And I started to create editorials because, as you guys know, with the pandemic, we can't shoot, we can't meet.
Her latest collection was inspired by her Congolese heritage, and she was due to make her New York Fashion Week debut. But when the COVID-19 pandemic hit, she had to get more creative.
When I started designing, I had two choices. I could either become an all-around designer who designs for all women, or I can be an African designer, and I would just be placed in the category of being an African designer. And I was like, no, I want to be an all-around designer. But when the time is right, I definitely have to do a collection inspired by my country and talk about an issue that is going on in my country. So that's why I did it that way.
With the success of her virtual fashion show, her clothes and designs have been seen all over the world. This is her advice for budding entrepreneurs.
Get a mentor if you can, because it really helps. When I started, I made a lot of painful decisions. I'm grateful for them, but if I had someone kind of guiding me along the way, it would have been a lot easier to, maneuver and get through. Don't rush. Take care of yourself. That is extremely important. And 3, figure out what it is that makes you you and amplify that, because no one could do you better than yourself.
Great. That's it on Focus. Goodbye.